Hey, this is an emergency Nerds of Color video we had to drop. Big news today. HBO Max is getting its name back. That's the craziest thing I've seen all day because seriously, Swara is here. We're rocking our Superman tees because
This new Superman trailer has just dropped, and I can curse, right?
oh, of course.
It looks fucking incredible. I just like I mean, I was excited really basically from the start. There was some trepidations here and there with maybe some news we were getting that which we'll get into later, but overall, from the first teaser to this trailer, I really think, knock on wood, but I genuinely think James Gunn gets Superman. Like the Superman both you and I love.
I said this on the last podcast that I was not going to watch the trailer because I wanted to go in as clean as possible, but July 11th is so far away.
Right.
I couldn't help myself. Like the second I saw it dropped, I was like, watch,
Have to watch.
rewatch, watch a third time. Um, yeah. So before we go any further, do you want to watch it again?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. I mean, this is the fifth time I've seen it, so it's not like a,
Hmm.
it's not. This is not an honest reaction where like half those reaction
But
videos
it's
I don't.
okay. It doesn't matter. It's just so good.
I don't think those reaction videos are ever like people's first time seeing anything anyway.
Probably
But
not. Probably not. But anyway, we love this. We love the interview. You can't hear it now, but David does the voice change, which is so good.
well, and I think what you see from this interaction between Rachel Brosnahan and David Cornsweet is the Clois chemistry, which
Hmm.
is the most important thing you have to get right in a Superman movie. And I
Absolutely.
and I argue that one of the reasons Man of Steel and Superman Returns don't go over as well as other
Yeah,
Superman interpretations is that the chemistry between their Lois and Clarks are not where they need to be. Like,
I agree.
it's funny. Yesterday was the 14th anniversary of the Smallville finale. And
Interesting.
that, Erica and Tom are always going to be my favorite Clois.
Hmm.
But there's something undeniable about, like, you know, uh, and I love David getting angry there. Like
Yeah.
that's
You
like
see,
an
this
angry
this
Superman, but righteous anger.
this is my favorite part. It's like the assumption is, oh, Superman just has to go through the American government. He has to do these rules and regulations. No, people are going to die if he doesn't stop this war. And this feels
Right.
very appropriate in this geopolitical moment we're in. And I really think I'm hopeful, or we'll get into it later, but this scene looks incredible. Lex Luthor looks incredible. Just like a perfect dick, perfect, like racist, speciest dick, like talking about Superman
And
here. Yeah,
if there's one critique, and then, of course,
sure.
I don't want to critique anything until I've actually seen the product, but
Mhm.
I am like, this is the third Superman movie where Lex finds the Fortress of Solitude, and is I just wish that's one
We know
trope
that's
that
gonna
we don't need
happen.
in a
Yeah.
Superman movie.
I don't
He
know. I'm
better not have he
intrigued.
better not have like a real estate deal going wrong.
I, d- I think James Gunn has something else in mind. No, but this part saying like,
I hope so.
Superman is the center of the world's conversation. It's like that jealousy, just so crucial
Hmm.
for Lex.
And what's also cool about the meta-ness of Nick Holt's portrayal is he auditioned for Superman
That's right. Yeah.
and he didn't get it. So I wonder how much of that, like, if I ever get a chance to talk to him, I would love to ask him, like, how much of that do you channel into your Lex Luthor? Because that's
Hmm.
Lex Luthor's whole thing is like, I want to be Superman. I
Yeah.
want to be the most powerful man in the universe.
There's the
Uh,
yes. The
what do we
kingdom
think
come
of
has.
crypto? Do we love crypto?
We love crypto. We stand crypto. Just like perfect. And just like, if you saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3, you know how much James Gunn loves animals and he's bringing that here and I just love that energy.
Yeah. So I mean, I was saying, and I was getting distracted by the trailer, but like the Clark Lois relationship
Hmm.
all the way back to Margot Kidder and Chris Reeve, right? Like that is the foundation of any Superman story. Do you
Yeah.
agree?
Oh, um, it's one of the key foundations for sure. And the degree to which you involve Lois in the storylines, how much you make her an active participant versus being a damsel in distress. Thankfully, she's grown far more into being an active participant across her portrayals, and I'm certain that'll continue to be the case here. Uh, but yeah, it is very fundamental. And I think something interesting is that sometimes like Superman media doesn't always portray that, such as in
Right.
Superman 3, where like they sideline Lois completely because they
Yeah.
had disagree with Margot Kidder. It's probably one of the reasons I think Superman 3 is like one of the worst Superman
Right,
movies.
right.
Um, so yeah, it is definitely fundamental.
So yeah, just to kind of circle back to like the beats that we do see in this, because one of the reasons I didn't want to watch the trailer is like I didn't want to have too much story spoiled, and we've
Hmm.
seen in trailer culture in the last few years that like they tell literally the whole story. Like, you know,
Hmm.
thank God I watched Sinners without seeing the trailers for Sinners because I had heard that if you watch the trailers for Sinners, it'll ruin some of the surprises in the movie. And that second Sinners
That could be
trailer
one
was like,
argument.
oh,
Yeah.
like there's a lot of things in here that I would have loved to have been surprised about.
Hmm.
I think this does a good job of still not giving you everything, which a
Hmm.
lot of trailers seem to do nowadays.
Yeah, I very much agree. And I'm hopeful, again, with this trailer for the subject matter it'll be tackling. And let's just get into the discussion of like the rumors going into the Superman movie that he was going to go into a quote unquote Middle Eastern country to like, and a lot of the movie would be revolved around there. And there were rumors back and forth about whether Bassem Youssef would be in the movie and whether he was ousted from the film because like he spoke up for Gaza when no, that is absolutely not the case. And he confirmed that in his conversation with James Gunn. They decided to go a different direction. It was probably smarter to do that, where you're not gonna like dive too deep into this, but still like the notion of hey, there is a conflict or a war that is devastating to civilians in the world, and Superman is just like I do not represent anyone. I am only representing myself, and I save people because it is simply the right thing to do. And that is so wonderfully cathartic. And I think that's portrayed here in such a way. Again, not to extrapolate too much, but when you see Lois asking him, "Oh, you bypassed the Secretary of Defense, U.S. officials to do this," and Clark rightly like gets righteously upset. He's like, "People were going to die," and that's so refreshing. That's so um that speaks to the heart of who Superman is, and you just protect people because it's the right thing to do. And we know from James Gunn's earlier work in DC for his first work with the Suicide Squad, how he was very critical of like US intervention in world affairs. It was very directly based on that. And I really hope more hopeful now that he is going to bring that into this and just have a Superman who really rebels. And I also, on that note, I love that this came out the day after the Andor finale. Somehow it just like ties
Everything,
together
everything
and
is
just
everything
yeah,
is like fits together. No, and,
yeah,
and I don't want to be the guy that's constantly comparing this version of Superman to other versions of Superman, but it is quite
it's
the
fair to do.
contrast in how because like Man of Steel, there's a subplot about like Superman's interaction with the military and the whole destroying the drone and everything like that. But I think like that was just like so in your face and like on the nose
Hmm.
that I think hopefully they avoid that here, where
Yeah.
and one problem I always had with that Man of Steel scene too is like he gave away his secret identity because like I'm a kid from Kansas and like uh
Yeah.
now they know
Like
where Superman's from.
I just don't understand the point that was really trying to be made
Right,
there.
exactly,
And I've
exactly.
talked
The
yeah,
point was muddled, and I think
yeah.
it'll be a little bit clearer here.
Like I've talked to Snyder fans about it, not to like diss the movie more than it's already been dissed by people, but it's just not for me. This though, this feels like it's for me. I'm so
Well, I
excited.
mean, this is a version of Superman that, again, from the bits and pieces we've seen, that I feel like, we've never had the opportunity to get because
Mm,
the comic book version of Superman has never been interpreted in
hmm.
other medium outside of animation. Like,
Right.
there's never been a live action comic book Superman.
Yeah. This feels like animated Superman in a
Yeah.
great way. This feels like the animated series from the 90s, which I think is one of the peak depictions of Superman. Also, I think there's this channel on YouTube. I think they're called Serum Lake. I could be mixing them up with someone else, but they did a video series. They do a lot of video series on the DCAU, and we're talking about how Superman, the last Son of Krypton, those first three episodes were like the best depiction of Superman's origin story, and I personally agree with that. Like in TV and film, all that to say is like the animated series is so iconic, just like Batman the animated series.
Well, and I think like because the Supermans we've seen have always been like Superman and Clark Kent are these two
Mm-hmm.
distinct, identities. And I
Mm,
think what people miss about this, at least the way I interpret the Superman character, is that they're not. Like we all contain multitudes, and
1000%.
it's the thing that always bothered me about the Kill Bill monologue that David Carradine
Yep.
gives, like Quentin Tarantino's misunderstanding of Superman, where he says Clark Kent is his critique of the human race, and like the goofy
Mm-hmm.
Clark Kent persona is how he sees humanity, and it's like that's the fundamental misreading of Superman, because
1000%.
Superman and Clark Kent are the same person.
Yeah.
Superman, Clark Kent, Kal-El, and I think we know this as like third culture people, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
are one way with our coworkers, we're one way at home, we're another way with our friends, we're another way with our people, and I think that's Superman. Like
That's
Gene Yang said this when he started writing the Superman stories. Like he took a lot of his Asian American,
mm-hmm.
you know, perspective into like how he interpreted the Kal-El versus Clark Kent versus Superman. They're all the same person. Just like the different personas we put out in the world are still us. And it's never, one like the Batman thing is like, who's the mask? And the thing with
Mm-hmm.
Superman, what was great about that interview with Lois is that he's Superman and Clark Kent at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's very Smallville,
Yeah.
like I don't think you see David in glasses in this whole trailer. Even when he's being
Hmm.
Clark in the apartment, no glasses. He's Clark in the on
Right.
the farm, no glasses. It's very Smallville to me. It's very Tom Welling. Like Superman is in there, even though he's not wearing the suit. He's
Like
still
like
Superman.
like he'll show his full self to people he trusts who know his identity, like Lois, and thus no glasses. But then when he's out in public, he'll be wearing the
Right.
glasses to obscure his
Either the
identity.
glasses or the S. Like he's got to have one or
Right,
the
right.
other. But who he really is not defined by the glasses or the S. And that's who the people get to see. As you said, his he's doing his Superman voice in his Clark Kent clothes,
Mm,
and that's so like, you know, it is reminiscent of that scene in the classic scene in the first Superman movie where he wants to tell Lois his secret and he takes off his glasses and his spine straightens and then he kind of like
yep.
reduces himself again. It's very much like that
The
with
code switching.
yeah,
Yep.
and that's an aspect of Superman that I think that James Gunn understands, and we'll see. And kind of related to the last teaser we got, where we got the
Mm,
extended scene on at the Fortress of Solitude with the robots.
mm,
And the way he like even talks to the robots, you see like that Midwestern, like he kind of acknowledges the female robot and she kind of giggles. Like you can't his
yeah.
Midwestern etiquette. You can't mask because Superman and Clark Kent are the same person.
Yeah, 1000%. Going back a little earlier to you talking about like the different personas he shows in real life, it reminds me a lot of what Dr. Dre Letamendi says on the Arkham sessions about Bruce Wayne and Batman, and that you have three personas. You have Batman, you have Bruce Wayne, who's like public facing, this like billionaire playboy, and then you just have Bruce, who is like the real person. And I suppose in this, we have Superman, we have like Clark Kent, the journalist, and then we just have Clark slash Kal-El. Because like
Right.
he really does in his mythology, he really does embrace both names very much.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think again, as a Chinese American person who has a
Yeah.
Chinese name and an English name, because you do like I think you have these identity crises where you're like, well, what's my real name? And
Mm.
you kind of go through these more radical movements when you're like, Keith is not my real name, but then it is. That's the name I was still.
Yeah,
It's still the name my parents gave me. It's still
totally.
and I think that it's a especially in this modern in the modern perspective of what names mean to people, like where you have
Mm.
particularly like in trans identities where like a name is very
Totally,
meaningful,
yeah.
and changing one's name can be a meaningful thing. I think it's what the Superman, I won't even say the messages, but like
Mm.
we can be all three names. We don't have to like reject a name
Yeah.
to embrace the other name, because they're all part of us somewhere.
Hmm.
um go ahead.
I was just gonna say it just speaks to the universality of Superman in such a wonderful way. He was originally created by Jewish immigrants to the U.S. And very much telling the immigrant story. And they were taking the notion of the Uberman, which unfortunately, was created by the
Right.
Nazis. They were like, we're taking this back and we're creating our own Superman to combat that, who is actually informed by his unique identity, of being an immigrant. And it really, Superman used to be seen as like and still in many ways is seen as the all-American hero, but really Superman is a worldwide hero. Particularly, sorry to get into geopolitics again, frankly, the view of the US right now worldwide is not the best. That's an objective fact. But I think that also, like, frankly, led into DC's decision to change Superman's motto,
Auto.
from truth, justice, and the American way to now truth, justice, and a better tomorrow, to reflect that universality, to reflect how it's not just, immigrants to the US, but just anyone anywhere, particularly, like migrants and especially refugees who like feel so distraught, but then they see Superman and they know his story, his myth. He is like the iconic like myth for people worldwide. And I love Superman. That's all.
Well, and I think that's the there's been an increase in the last few years of like Superman-esque characters, but they're like morally either repugnant or ambiguous. Like, you have the
Hmm.
Homelanders and the Omni. It's just even the
Right.
Snyder version of Superman. It's like no, it's a very Lutherian version of like
Mm.
interpretation of Superman. Like no one person can be that powerful and not be morally bankrupt, right? Because
Right.
that's even in if we had continued with the Snyderverse, the whole next three movies was going to be about Superman going on a murderous rampage, right? Like
Lovely.
like the
Sorry, not to
Homelander.
like harsh
No,
on
no,
the
no. I mean, but it's
Snyderverse
not even.
more.
I don't, and I'm not attacking Snyderverse fans, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
even Homelander is like,
Hmm.
there's that meme that goes around like, who America thinks it is, and it's a picture of Superman, but who America really is, it's Homelander.
Totally, yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And because that is something about like when you are the most powerful being, you can't be also good. That's just not fair. Is I guess but that's what makes Superman such a special character. Is
Hmm.
that his humanity is his goodness is what defines him. It's not his powers. His powers don't define him. The flying, the heat vision, the super breath, none of that defines Superman. What defines
Yeah.
Superman is the salt of the earth parents that he has, his relationship with Lois, his love of humanity, his annoyance with his dog. Like those are the things that, when they always say Superman has no weaknesses and that's why he's inherently a boring character, like his weaknesses are his connections to humanity. That is his ultimate
Hmm.
weakness.
Yeah,
And
which is villains that constantly exploit.
right,
Yeah.
or they should. And if
Yeah.
the good writers know how to write that in the
Hmm.
comics is that it's not about how invulnerable he is. He's the most vulnerable. And I think what this trailer shows is Superman at his most vulnerable. Because you have
Oh
his
yeah.
argument with Lois, his dad, Pa Kent having to kind of reassure him. Um, even the civilian helping him from the ground. Like that's such a like emotional thing to think about, like a normal human helping Superman, you know, paying that debt back that Superman the savior. It's such like that's the kind of thing we don't
Hmm.
that most people don't get about Superman, and hopefully, again we haven't seen the film. It's still 2 months away,
Of course.
but all signals point to us finally getting the comic book Superman that's the one that people always worry about. He's too perfect. He's too boring. But I think what was the tagline? Well, not tagline, but like the philosophy James Gunn said, like he believes in kindness in a world that thinks it's
Yes.
like out of touch or something like that.
Exactly. James Gunn gets it. Like again, like knock on wood, I'm so superstitious, like I don't want to overhype things too much. We still have not seen the film. For all we know, it could be, but signs pointing to they get it. And I've just also been listening to interviews with the cast on the official DC Studios podcast. By the way, shout out to Fantastic Frankie. She is doing a fantastic job being one of the main hosts there. And they've been interviewing the cast, and all of them seem to really get it. Oh, by the way, the actress playing Cat Grant is actually Iranian American.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we got some Swana representation in there, so that's great. I do definitely know, and I feel like I can say this to my fiance's Iranian. Definitely like some Iranians out there who are Cat Grant-ish, as in any group, but
That's kind of a compliment, maybe.
it is kind of it makes of both the good and the bad. But anyway, all that to say, Like I really feel like James Gunn gets it in Clark slash Kal-El's character, and what this is the main conflict we are seeing in the trailer. Again, without giving too much away, it's Superman doing his best to be there for everyone, and what he's doing is resisting the forces at play, the institutional forces at play, who want to be like, nope, stay where you are, you're not allowed to do this. But he also has to like be delicate, and he can't just like go smashing through, the police and troops and stuff. He acquiesces, and it's a moral conflict. Uh it's almost like a courtroom drama potentially, and that's something that could be really compelling. That's part of why we love Superman, like the ideas that Superman brings about. Like the powers are cool, but it's the emotions, it's his connection to humanity, it's his connection to like the law, the fact that he is technically a vigilante. Despite him like trying to contrast himself with Batman being like, you're a vigilante, and like Batman, I think often is like, well, what are you doing? So I remember like World's Finest from, again, Superman and Batman the animated series, like one of the first iconic team ups, and that's where the conflict really lies, and that's when we're looking forward to seeing.
Well, one question that I have coming out of this trailer, like it heavily implies that Rick Flag is the Secretary of Defense and Lex
Hmm.
Luthor is the president. I don't I don't know if that's where they're going, but the trailer definitely implies that. Do you think this is a President Luthor story?
I didn't get that impression. It could be him, running for president. I mean, Lex, he just wants to go for anything and everything. I mean, maybe that's like a big reveal during the movie that he is elected president or something, and then he makes Superman's life a living hell.
Yeah, I
Like
just
that
because
would
I
be
think like
compelling to see.
when Lois says, "Did you consult with the president?" and they cut to Lex, and I was just like, "Oh, what? Yeah, you didn't notice that? Yeah, you
Oh,
when
I didn't clock that.
on your
Wow,
rewatch
that.
because when she says, "Did you check with the Secretary of Defense?" and then it cuts to Rick Flag, and I'm like, I thought he was the head of Argus. Is he the Secretary of Defense? What's going on here?
Hmm.
And then they said, "Did you
Well,
consult with the
is that
president?" and
Rick
then they
Flag
cut to
Senior or Junior? Because
well,
Junior
Junior's
is part of,
dead.
yeah, from the Suicide
it's a
Squad.
it's
Yeah,
a what's his face, Frank Grillo, who's going to
yeah,
be
yeah.
the connecting tissue between
Hmm.
Creature Commandos and Peacemaker. And Peacemaker is supposed to come out after, or it definitely comes out, but it's supposed to take place after the events of Superman. And did
Ooh.
you see the Peacemaker trailer last week?
Yes, I did. Yes, I
You
did.
know, Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl are in that trailer, but they're still
Right.
wearing the Lord Tech costumes. So because
Mm.
I thought one like story beat would be like the Maxwell Lord run Justice League will be inspired by Superman to like break free from their corporate overlord, but they're still Lord
Hmm.
Tech and the Peacemaker. So like John Cena's auditioning for Maxwell Lord. So I won't wonder if that's actually not a
Wait,
story.
really?
Yeah,
John
and
Cena? Oh.
the trailer for Peacemaker's auditioning to be part of the Justice League, and they're all like, he
Oh,
sucks.
oh, gotcha,
Remember
gotcha.
that?
I
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
I mixed that up. Like I thought you meant he was auditioning for the role.
Oh no,
Yeah,
no, no, no. I just said
yeah.
John Cena because it was John Cena. I meant
Yeah, yeah.
like the Chris, the Peacemaker
Yeah, yeah.
character, was
Hmm.
auditioning to be part of the Justice League, and so I don't know. I mean, not to. I said that I was talking about this on the podcast. We don't need to get bogged down in continuity and like extended
Hmm.
universes. As long as the story is good, that's all that
I,
matters.
I just want to say whenever you say it on the podcast, I very much nod my face in agreement. I very much hope like I too am tired of the overbearing extended universes that frankly hamper a lot of storytelling that we've seen. I think we've seen it in Star Wars. We've definitely seen it in the MCU. Like
Hmm.
I'm full on like just not an MCU fan anymore personally.
Yeah,
I don't have confidence. I mean, I hear Thunderbolts is good, but like
it was
is
fine.
yeah,
It's
that's the
fine.
thing. I'm
It's
hearing
fine.
increasingly it was fine, and I'm just like, okay, cool. I'm not gonna maybe rush to see it. I also don't have, not to harp on the MCU too much, but I don't have that much hope for Doomsday.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Definitely
but
I mean, you and I have been DC stands. Like
yes,
in the great war between DC and Marvel.
yes.
We've always been more DC than Marvel. That's
And you see,
not
like I
a
am a
secret.
Marvel fan. I do
Although
have my
I
Miss
mean, you
Marvel
literally have
poster,
Ms.
and
Marvel
yeah,
on your wall. I mean, I'm full of DC. I am truly representing DC on my walls.
yeah.
But no, yeah. I mean, so I
I need
get
more
that.
DC posters for sure.
I think there's a DC Funko Pop in there somewhere.
Mm,
But no, I
probably
mean,
is.
I have not been excited for like most nerd. content. Honestly, like this is another
Mm-hmm.
topic we've said on the podcast. It's like I have been a little bit out of touch of things because I've not been so swept up. But to your point about Andor, Andor has fully like rekindled my love of Star Wars. So much so
Mm-hmm.
that I kind of like don't like any of the sequels anymore because it's like the,
The sequel
knowing that the
trilogy.
rebellion just like falls apart in five
Yeah.
years is kind of like depressing now. And like the whole rise of the first, seeing
Mm-hmm.
Andor and the rise of the rebellion like fills me with so much hope, knowing that in like 10 years it all goes to shit anyway.
Yeah. You see, here's
Luthen
the
died
thing.
for nothing. Spoiler.
Oh God. Okay, so here's I'm not to talk about Star Wars too much, but yeah, I love Andor. I really think that the best stories in Star Wars right now are all around the original trilogy and prequel
Yeah.
trilogy. And I think that as someone who used to love the sequel trilogy, I love the first two movies, and then Tross happened, and that killed my love of it entirely. And I think it makes no sense as a story. But that also goes into this fundamental point of like this is what it is. It's overextending your universe.
Yeah.
It's basically it's to such a point where you renege on character journeys or plot points, and it just doesn't make sense, and you're left with something like the sequel trilogy where you feel like just nothing matters. So honestly, I like am at the point where I would like to consider the sequel trilogy like not canon, or I don't think about it because it's not a
Mhm.
story that resonates with me because they butchered it so badly and unfortunately ruined a lot of the characters I used to love. So the thing is with Superman, what I am hopeful for, and I do think that James Gunn does a good job of this, that with each of his films, even if there are like sequels like Guardians, like The Suicide Squad, like Peacemaker season 1 in and of itself, where you can have a very self-contained story and people can just enjoy that on its own. Like for example, Guardians 2, which is considered like the lesser of the three films, I still enjoy watching it. I still think it's a very good film on its own. Like you're given the context you need. I just want films in these universes to stand on their own.
That's
And yeah,
that part.
yeah.
Because I think, yeah, my one fear, and I've articulated this many times about the new DCU, is
Mm-hmm.
James Gunn's original announcement where he said it all connects from the
Right.
cartoons to the
Right.
books to the TV shows to the movies. And on the surface, you're like, oh, that's so cool. It's like the MCU. But then that was always to me
Then you're
the
like, oh no, it's the
yeah.
MC.
Or even with Star Wars, right? Like
Yeah.
the some of the discourse about Andor is like, well, they changed the origin of K2SO,
Who
or
cares? It
they
was a
they
comic that Tony Gilroy never read.
they
Who cares? I'm
retconned
sorry.
Mon Mothma's rebel speech, all that stuff. And it's like
like, yeah.
but that's what I mean. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to feel like this stuff is homework.
Right.
And if I get a great story, I don't want to go, but that couldn't happen because in this time, like I was just like I would literally just doing about Peacemaker. I'm like, well, why are they still Lord Tech? You know what I mean? Like, and
Well, no,
I
no,
fall.
not to
I'm a
harp on
nerd.
you,
I
but
can't
like
help it. I still fall into that trap.
I would like to think that like maybe they just still have the Lord Tech, using it
But they were
without
sitting
putting
right
in
next
work.
to Maxwell Lord. Sorry,
They
doing
were
it again.
in yeah,
I'm
that's right. They were in
I'm
with
doing it
Maxwell Lord.
again.
Sorry, I
It
forgot.
doesn't matter,
Um,
Swara. It doesn't
yes,
matter.
it doesn't matter.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
let's just
matter.
enjoy these things on their own. Look,
You
and maybe they'll just
can't take the
retcon
nerd out
something.
the boy sometimes.
uh, but anyway,
But
what a
yeah,
great
we
trailer.
Superman trailer, man. We're almost there. 2 more months. Yeah, 2 months. A little less than 2 months, and we're fully into the new version of the DC universe.
Yeah, I hope once again, like, and here's the thing. I just to make a last note about like the universe thing. I actually do have hope that these projects, Superman, the Green Lantern series, Supergirl, um, and other things that are being made, that James Gunn, he himself is a writer, director, creator. He understands the value of giving writers and directors, other creators, like their own voice and being able to make a statement with their projects. So I genuinely am hopeful that it won't be like the MCU, where it won't be like, oh, now this leads into that, and this
Mhm.
MacGuffin leads it. Like, if we're being real, the Infinity Saga was like all about MacGuffins, like all throughout. They did it very well, I will say that. But then like no more MacGuffins, and or they try to do other MacGuffins that were terrible. sorry, not a harp on the MCU, but no, but I'm hopeful that James Gunn, like, again, is going to give creators their voice, that we can enjoy these things on their own. The understanding that the DC universe is so wide, so vast, you can have these individual stories. And like, even like, here's the thing that like gave me hope about this, like seeing the Justice Society members here. I would imagine that they're, perhaps, I mean, they'll be key characters, of course, but still, like, they're not necessarily the main characters, they're
Right.
supporting characters, and they're here to support the narrative that of the conflict that Superman is facing. This is Superman's story, this is Clark's conflict that he has to resolve, and that really came through to me in this trailer,
I
and
mean,
I'm just so
one of
excited.
the, as someone who also lives on the internet, I'm sure you've seen the discourse and you've seen a lot of the like the negative reactions to this, and a lot of that is driven by bots and driven by like people
Hmm.
with agendas to they want to tank this because of their devotion to other versions of Superman.
Yep.
But one of their critiques has been like, well, this is, everyone complains about overstuffed superhero movies. This is clearly an overstuffed Superman movie, but it isn't. To your point, the inclusion of the Justice League in this is not to be a Justice League movie. It's not
Right.
stuffing heroes for the sake of stuffing heroes.
Yeah.
It's to show Superman in that context, the way you see Clark in the Daily Planet context, right? Like,
Yes.
you still, like you mentioned, Cat Grant, Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, Lois, they're in
Yeah.
this because Clark lives, that's a part of Clark's life to be a
Exactly.
journalist at the planet. But another part of Clark's, and I think James Gunn has said this, is being a superhero. And this is a world, again, this is what sets us apart from other Superman movies. This is the world in which superheroes exist.
Yeah.
Superman's not
Like,
the
what does
only
that look
superhero.
like? Yeah.
And this is what it looks like. So when he
Yeah.
goes off into battle, there are other superheroes. And we've never
Hmm.
seen that. Even the Justice League movie was Superman, alone, not knowing who these other superheroes are. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
This is him actually interacting with his coworkers as other superheroes.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it.
So excited.
I'm hopeful, knock on wood, it's as good as we're hyping ourselves up for it to be.
And we
But
have been disappointed. I
we
think
have been
last time you
disappointed in
and
the
I did
past.
a video like this, it was for the Flash. So
Yeah, and I really
and we
do
were
wish,
very
like,
excited about that.
I really do wish, like, I had, like, thought more critically about the Flash before doing
But
my
I,
review.
I will I will defend us on like the good
Sure.
things that we liked about that movie. I still
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
the stuff
totally,
that we were
totally.
excited about. I still like. I still like the
Absolutely.
Batman stuff. I still like.
Yes.
Ben Affleck gives his best performance in the DC EU in
Hmm.
that movie. Sorry to say, it's true.
No, yeah, I
And
agree.
like when he says his goodbyes to Barry, like that's
Hmm.
still, I find that a very emotional scene. So
So good, so good.
yeah, I mean, but some of that was really shitty. So
Yeah,
I think we were blinded in
you
the
know,
glow of a new movie.
yeah, but that's the thing, like, what I will say about our excitement and hype right now, we are, and I think millions right now. Like, the trailer has, like, in 1 hour, like, 1 million views. Um, we are all excited because of our love for this iconic character. We're having these rich discussions. Even if it was this was a fantastic trailer. Even if the film somehow is not as good, we're still, we still feel this joy, we feel this
Hmm.
hope, we feel this optimism, we feel excited about one of our favorite characters, and we've seen so many times in so many different versions. But that's why these characters endure.
Yeah.
And this, like, really feels like, this is the other thing, to contrast the MCU and DC. This does not feel like a homogenization of the character by any means. You know what? I think it was like when the teaser trailer dropped, or like last month or something. I'm not wearing it now, obviously, but DC came out with, in conjunction with the promo for this film, they came out with a T-shirt that has basically every single Superman symbol on it, like from 1930s to today, and with the year under each of them, just like all
Hmm.
plastered around, and they are honoring the legacy of all of these stories.
That was the
It
name. The original name of the movie was Superman Legacy.
that Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm
And
so
I think,
excited.
and I know they changed, they got rid of the subtitle, but I think to that point, what this film will represent metatextually is
Hmm.
that legacy of Superman. I think that's probably
Totally, yeah.
why he named that originally. And in retrospect, it makes sense that you get rid of the subtitle because this is the first movie, so it's kind of weird to be called legacy when it's your first movie. But
Totally.
I think, as you know, spiritually it honors the legacy of Superman in all his forms,
And
whether
the
it's
James
the movies.
Williams score, the John Williams score, like beautiful.
Yeah, and
So well done.
I'll say this. I've always been of a mind that like every version of Superman deserves his own theme. So I was very
Mhm.
supportive of the Hans Zimmer theme for Man of Steel. I was supportive of, you know, not necessarily, you know, one of the problems with the Joss Whedon version of Justice League is when they bring back the Danny Elfman and the John Williams score for those versions
Mhm.
of Batman and Superman, and to me it never fit because it was like they already have like the Dark Knight theme is distinct from the Batman theme, from
Right.
the 89 theme, and they all work. All that said, there is something about how they use, I think it's because it's not just like the Superman Returns where they're just aping the entire like score, that
Mhm.
they're interpreting the John Williams score, you know? Like
Mhm.
it's not
Yeah,
just a
exactly. Yeah.
note for note remake of the score. It's got its own flavor. And I think again, going back to the point about legacy, I hear strands of not just the Williams. I hear a little bit of Zimmer in there. I
Mhm.
hear a little bit of like, you know, because the way it incorporates the electric guitar and the snare drums, it's very much like I think this version of Superman is an amalgamation of all that's come before. You know, I've already talked
Totally.
about
Yeah.
Smallville. I've already talked about Man of Steel. I've already talked about Christopher Reeve. All of
The
that I
animated
see
series.
in
Yeah.
here. You know what I mean? And I think that's if people can, you know, take their blinders off, we'll see that this truly is honoring the legacy of all versions of
Mhm.
Superman, and that's what we'll see on screen. That's my hope.
Bravo. So well said. I had
And
no
all we have is
notes.
hope. You know.
All we have is hope.
Uh,
Man, I have to say, like, this morning, like, wasn't like the best. I mean, I slept well and everything, but I was like thinking a lot about like the horrible news in the world. You know, looking for glimmers of hope here and there, and then Superman trailer comes out, and I'm just like,
Superman saves the
hope.
day.
Superman saves the day.
This
That's
sounds
what
like a
he
job for
does.
Superman.
This sounds like a job for Superman. Yes.
Comments and the lectures, fanboys, professional artists, and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC. In full color, you see me. The hard knock life.